Well, I got attacked by a spider last night when streaming Analog Allies with Brett. Link in the description box down below. I'm pretty sure it tried to end me and end my life. The Knicks stink. They can't win a game against a crap team to save their life. So I'm a little on edge today. I'm a little out of it today, but I mean, the show must go on. We've got to talk about video game stuff because that, my friends, is what I do. And we have an interesting story that I've seen making the rounds over the past 24 hours or so on the social medias and on different websites and stuff like that, talking about the Nintendo Switch 2. Now, we are less than 2 weeks away from the trailer. I told you time was going to fly by, you know, leading up to this thing. Like, people thought, oh, you gotta wait so long from January to April, but it's like, bro, it's already here. Spring is sprung, flowers are blooming, and spiders are coming into my basement and trying to kill me, I guess. But with this coming up, you know, there's still a lot of questions about it, and we're hoping to get some of these answers during the trailer. But one thing I don't think we're going to get like concrete information on are when it comes to the specs side of things, because Nintendo, they don't talk about specs. It's just a world that they don't ever seem to really get involved with. They just don't seem to care, you know, about the specs. It's what you can do with the specs to make the games look and play as good as they possibly can on the hardware that it's designed for. Now, you could take or leave that. Of course, there's the whole upscaling thing. We talked about that yesterday with Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition, which is a great game, by the way. I'm about 7 or so hours in. Yes, I played for 7 hours yesterday, but that kind of ties in to what I'm talking about with what we're going to be talking about today, because I play my Nintendo Switch OLED in handheld mode way more than I do docked. In general, I don't play my Switch really docked all that often unless I'm recording footage for a game. I prefer to play my Switch in handheld mode because it allows me to do other things. Like if it wasn't for playing Xenoblade while watching the Knicks completely fall apart against the Charlotte Hornets of all teams last night, who knows? Who knows what would have happened to me? So talking about the system in handheld mode is something I'm always very interested in. And obviously, you know, we're getting a bit of a deviation with the Nintendo Switch 2 from the Nintendo Switch OLED, because we're going from the OLED screen back to an LCD screen based on the information that we have been given. And a lot of people are worried about that. But my mindset was always, you're talking about an OLED or a LCD screen on the original Nintendo Switch from like 2013, 2014. We're 10 years removed from that LCD technology, and technology for screens is always evolving at a very rapid rate as far as what they're able to do. Not all LCD screens are created equal, and I don't think it's going to be that sort of a crazy thing switching from an OLED to an LCD screen on the Nintendo Switch 2 if you already own an OLED screen. But what if the Switch 2 screen is actually capable, and you know, more so capable than what we have now, and able to do things that the Switch 1 could only dream of in terms of handheld mode? And that's where things get very interesting, because we got to take a look at this story that has been floating around out there. Now, this is coming to us from the Gaming Leaks and Rumors Reddit page. I will link it in the description box down below. This is a rumor, of course, but the Switch 2 is rumored to have a 120 hertz LCD screen with VRR and HDR support. VRR, of course, being variable refresh rate, and HDR, I mean, I don't really know what HDR stands for, but if you know anything about screens, this is basically saying that up to 120 hertz, meaning that you can get 120 frames per second. Now, this all sounds very good, but is it coming from a place of legitimacy? This is from Family Boards user Secret Boy. Secret, I've got a secret, who previously almost accurately, that's off to a rough start, called out the GPU performance before the clock speeds were released 10 days later back in January. Okay, so the 120 hertz claim was originally first made back in January twice, which also accounts the first message in this forum. I've heard that the screen supports 120 hertz and VRR, which would be helpful a lot in handheld. People should be prepared for about 3 teraflops docked and around half that in handheld. I don't expect people to believe me, but that's what I've heard the final specs are. I've also heard that the screen is 120 hertz LCD, of course, what we're talking about, that supports VRR, though, which is amazing because developers can optimize the handheld profiles of their games with variable refresh rate and 40 frames per second in mind. He has since then reiterated and confirmed with confidence that the Switch 2 will indeed have a screen refresh rate of 120 Hz, supports both HDR and VRR, and has an LCD display. So then, once again, although I will reiterate that the screen is 120 hertz with HDR and VRR support, that's what I'm personally most excited for. I forgot to mention that it is an LCD. No idea about the actual quality of the screen, but OLED was always going to be too expensive for this feature set, which they need to get into the first iteration of hardware so that developers can optimize their games around it. Speculation. Now, we've seen things like, I believe the Steam Deck OLED can hit 90 hertz with that. And that does make a difference in terms of how the games kind of look and, more importantly, how the games feel. So many people just equate, things like frame rates and refresh rates and stuff like that down to more so a graphical side of things, just how the game actually looks and, I guess, performs would be the proper word with this. But there is a substantial different feeling when you're playing a game that is, 60 frames per second or higher than it is when you're playing something at 30 frames per second. Now, I'm not saying that 30 frame per second games can't be good, because there's tons that are, but it's definitely better to have a higher refresh rate and a higher, frames per second output when you're playing a game. I do think that the timing of this is interesting because, we're talking about the fact that, developers can make handheld profiles for their games with this feature set activated. And what did we talk about yesterday? We talked about a 60 frames per second mode that is in Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition that the Nintendo Switch 1 does not have access to right now. You can't access it on the system. Some people think it's leftover code, but to me, it's like, why would you leave that in there? Why would you leave that? That would just be taking up space. You wouldn't want to leave that in there unless you're kind of planning something with that. Now, people are questioning things like the HDR with VRR support. Is that something that is possible for especially when you kind of look at Nintendo and how they go about handling hardware? And it can just be somewhat of a pipe dream with this sort of situation. But I do feel like you have to, imagine that Nintendo wants to do something like this. We are under a different regime when it comes to President Furukawa, who is definitely more so business minded than, just let's be super creative. Let's make something super unique or something like that. You don't necessarily have to rock the boat with that. And when you look at things that people remember very fondly, like an NES to a Super Nintendo or something like that, like there was no real sort of crazy gimmicks with that sort of thing. It was just a beefier system that was building upon the principles that we saw with the NES. So, could that be what we're seeing with the Switch 2? I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility. I'm not going to sit here and say that, yes, it does have 120 hertz refresh rate. It does have VRR. It does have HDR. But if it does, that would be a hell of a handheld. That would be a hell of a system in terms of the visual clarity that you are getting and the experience that you are getting in handheld mode. And as someone who plays, their Switch primarily in handheld mode, I would love that. I would love that. It's the perfect thing to like throw on a movie in the background and then, play your Switch 2 or throw on some sports, Well, I should say Switch 1. I don't have a Switch 2 yet. I didn't buy that one from the guy who was trying to sell it to me for $3,000. But like it's the perfect complementary piece when I'm doing something, or when I have like a basketball game on in the background or something like that, and I want to play a game. Like I'm very hopeful for the screen on this. So, you know, people are doubting this, and we'll find out very soon. As far as the screen clarity is concerned, we probably won't find out any of these specs unless this is just a completely new age of Nintendo where they're like, here's the specs for it. Here's everything that you can expect as far as, you know, upscaling and variable refresh rates. That's definitely more of a PlayStation or Xbox thing, but potentially exciting. We'll have to keep an eye on this. Let me know in the comment section down below, though. Do you believe that this could be a possibility? I'm hopeful for it. You know, I would take just some of these things, like VRR and 120 hertz, leave the HDR on the table. And many people are going to be in the comments saying, oh, well, it doesn't make that big of a deal. But that's because you have a poverty TV. Like, if you have a TV that has like real HDR, does variable refresh rates, and does 120 hertz, it is a very different experience. Like it's noticeably different. You just have to have, you know, the cheap $200 Walmart special. It's not going to quite cut it. And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this video. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Be sure to like, comment, and share. Hit the bell as well. I'm going back to play Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.